Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week I wanted to invite Sumit back onto the podcast because he and I have been working on his business, his brand new business. It's very exciting. I'm very excited. He's very excited. So, I'm going to let him introduce that a little bit more now. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure to leave it with a like. And I'd love to hear what you think. The comment section down below. And I'll see you very soon.
My name is Sumit and I, and I run a company called Suminspire, which essentially is a business consultancy company helping small to medium-sized enterprises get off the ground and really develop the skills and the necessary know-how of how to launch a business, which surprisingly a lot of people get wrong in the first instance, and B, how to grow the business as well. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with initially. So Suminspire looks to tackle both aspects and looks to simplify the process, but at the same time build a strong core value for the business brand and also to build a strong foundation from the bottom up. So a business owner or a business itself can then go on to create what it really wants to create and achieve the heights that it deserves.
Yeah, cool. Fab. So for those, because I think there's going to be some people listening to this now that know you from our previous work and obviously the old brand of Suminspire. So from your side, would you mind just explaining briefly on what the differences are, how our work relationship has basically changed and how that kind of has, I guess, happened? Because I think for me it would be interesting to hear it from your side because I haven't actually asked you that because we've been very busy and head down doing it, right? So I think it should be interesting, and that's why I wanted to get you back on to sort of talk about that. So firstly, what's changed, number one? Number two, how did it sort of birth into something from your side?
I think Suminspire has always been an idea which was there. It's been around for almost a couple of years now. So it was an idea that came to my head, but it was a very broad idea, and I was unable to sort of narrow down exactly what I wanted to do with it. So as you very well know, Carlton, I've been part of startup businesses now for the last 10 to 11 years. I've successfully run a hospitality company for the last 7 years, and a investment company for the last 3 years. So for me, Suminspire was almost a clouded thought of being able to provide some sort of value to startup businesses, but not really knowing how to bring that about. So I think Suminspire started off as an idea. It was something which was just left very broad, and I think that's initially where our relationship sort of started to take more of a professional feel. We started to discuss a lot about how we can narrow the business down. Now, over the last, I'd say, probably just prior to Christmas, we had a conversation around Suminspire, and Brunton Media was obviously able to help me further narrow down exactly how I can go about giving back as much as I can, to this amazing following that I have. And, amongst that following is a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of very talented individuals. So Brunton Media was able to help me sort of narrow down exactly how Suminspire can be turned into a business and in exactly what sort of way we could go about setting it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of potential. I think we've been near it before with the content we've been doing and why we've been doing it and how, but I think we haven't had that initial consultancy side of it or really brand kind of business building aspect of it before. Would you agree, or would you say that was like, 'cause for me that's where the weaknesses were, and I've said this to you multiple times before, but I think that's where the weaknesses were in what we were doing, say, when we first started working together.
100%. And I think especially when you've got a busy schedule, it's very difficult to, you have the thoughts of what you want to do, how to further enhance, or bring about another business, but it's very difficult to make that transition from a thought into practicality, especially, with the kind of year that I've had, which has been, probably the most, I know the last year has been very challenging for a lot of people, but, I've had some of the highest points and some of the lowest points of my business career all in one year. which has been extraordinary. And I think when sometimes you have ideas, people are very quick to kind of give up on them. And I think having obviously Brunton Media around was a bit refreshing, because you always kept me in the loop with what I wanted to do, even at times when I was forgetting, what did we discuss in the last conversation. So I think sometimes and this is a lesson, for all people, all individuals looking to, make a successful career in whatever they're doing, or a successful business, or whatever it is they're trying to do, a startup. The point is, sometimes you have ideas, and it's okay if they don't come to fruition immediately. But I think your answer has always got to be not now, opposed to not doing it at all. And I think that was the difference. And I think that's where we've had that good relationship where, Carlton was always able to pick up that this was probably not the right time. And when he felt, for me, it was the right time, he was able to advise me on it. And, all of a sudden, within 2 months, we've got a business which is up and running, which is, it's got clients all of a sudden as well. The branding is now complete for it. We've got a few blogs all of a sudden in place. So when the timing is right, things will gel, but you've always got to have that kind of goal that you want to get there at some stage. It might just not be the time right now. And I think that was the case with Suminspire, with all that was going on around in my personal life, all that was going around with the pandemic, the after effects of it on my already established businesses. So, it was a very topsy-turvy point of view. But at the end of the day, I always say that, everything that has happened leads you to that moment that you're in right now. So I can never look back and disregard it, or in any sort of way condemn it, because all of that created what I've gone to create today. So it's all played its part, and I always think it's part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think it's really important for people to understand that just because you may not, maybe you do one project or two projects or three projects or four projects, whatever it is, with a client, to keep checking in on them, keep seeing how things are, because you never know what it might become if you keep that relationship and don't, quote unquote, burn bridges, right? By no means have we been close to burning bridges, but I think it's important that we could have drifted apart if either of us hadn't consciously made an effort to consistently talk to each other, even if it was just, hey bro, how you doing? I haven't talked to you in like 2 months or 3 months or whatever, because there was, a genuine like 6 to 9 month gap between us like talking every day to, because we've got projects going on or whatever it was, to now not talking for like 6 months, right? So I think that's important to understand, but also important, if you make a lasting impression on someone, it's very likely that they're more likely to be in a position where, when they're in the right, and I'm gonna build off the point you made, when they're in the right time, they're very aware, or they're very, it's a no-brainer for them to. And I don't want to speak for you here, so feel free to disagree if you do, but it's the right time, and it feels right for them because there's not questions there. They know what they're going to get. They know the trust's already there. They already know who they're dealing with, right? Is that true, or would you disagree?
No, I agree. I totally agree. And I think there's two parts to that. I mean, from a sales perspective, when you're prospecting, I think it's very important to go back a little bit, like I said, to understand that there's potential for this to be a business opportunity. It might just not be now, but at some point there's definitely potential. So, that's part of sales. Having been in sales my whole life, there's people I touch base with every 3 months, every 6 months, every year, because I see potential for that to turn into business. So, especially when you already had a working relationship before with a client or someone, that you're always going to get some sort of repeat business out of them by just staying in touch. So 100%, I think you're right in terms of that. But I think also from a personal perspective, when things are not going, the way you want them to, and additional pressures come into it. Now, COVID brought all sorts of additional issues for me, which were non-related to COVID. They just seemed to happen at the same time and had no correlation at all to the pandemic. But your mind can become so clouded with 101 things, all of a sudden, in your brain, that you're unable to actually sit down and think far ahead. You end up just staying in the moment. And when you stay in the moment, there's a lack of forward planning. And when there's a lack of forward planning, then you get to a very stagnant point at some point. And I felt I was slipping into a little bit of that, because all of a sudden, I've always been a great planner ahead. I've always got projects which are well planned for, well ahead of when I want to actually launch them. So I know there's always something to strive for. And all of a sudden, I think I was starting to find that there wasn't much to strive for, because there was a element of under planning from my side. But also, the things that give me a kick, that the things that give entrepreneurs a kick, the buzz, the 100 ideas that come to your mind in a day, you only need one of them to come to fruition for you to be successful. And I think I wasn't even thinking of any ideas. So how could I expect them to come to any sort of fruition? And again, that's a key element. People want to change their lives, people want to do things, but unless you've got ideas constantly bouncing in your head, and you're breaking those ideas down, and you're taking the good and you're leaving the bad behind, and you're trying to work out how to go forward, only then are you going to be able to put one step ahead of the other. But if you haven't even got that thinking, if you just got wishful thinking, sitting there thinking, I wish my life would be different. But I bet if I asked the people, how would you like it to be different, they would not be able to answer that question, because there's a lack of forward planning. There's a lack of motivation, because it's almost like a block. They're only wishing for it to be better, but they're not wishing, how could it be better? And for anything to change, you yourself have to change. So it was just reminding myself of all these things again, and just to get those entrepreneur kind of vibes going again.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think when we first started working together, I was in a very different place to where I am in business now, and I think it was a great showcase of the fact that no matter where people are in business, they can still work together, and they can still learn from each other, and they can still help each other grow and still help each other develop, right? So I think for me, and I think something that would be interesting for the viewer, but also for me, is going to be, you were one of the first people who I've really done a deep dive from starting a business from fresh with. Right, like when did we start? I think let's just start of January at the time of filming. It's currently 25th of January 2021. This will obviously not go out until February though. But I think it's interesting to sort of hear from your side how was the consulting side of it, or how was the consulting elements? Because for me, that was a package which I built in lockdown, and sort of something which I knew I was kind of doing, but I didn't actually have it packaged up in a way which I could quote unquote sell it. I hate saying the word sell because it feels really sleazy, but that's unfortunately what you have to do in business at some time, right? So how was so in a simple question, how was the consulting perspective for you?
So again, I'm gonna break that down into two aspects. So I think first and foremost, it's important for me to just revisit the Carlton I met initially, the Carlton who worked in Greg's, and I used to see your stories, because I'm a crazy person. I'm up at like 5:30, 6, in the morning, and I used to be, just waking up, and I'd have my cup of tea, and I'd just go through my stories very quickly, and I'll see Carlton's posted himself walking to work at about 4 in the morning. Right, and that was the Carlton that I knew, who did a bit of.
God, you remember? God, there's
I remember,
God.
bro.
Yeah, sorry.
So
Go on.
that was the Carlton I knew, who was working full time, but just doing a bit of shooting here and there on the weekends. I'd have to call up and be like, Carlton, yo, can we shoot a video? And you'd be like, yeah, sure, no problem. Let me check when I'm off from work. So, and then to when we carried on, when that relationship grew, and all of a sudden, the Carlton that I came to know after some while was someone who was running his own business, and was, had packed in his job at Greg's, and all of a sudden was, really thriving and really sort of putting in a lot of effort into business. And it reminded me a lot of myself when I first got involved, because you're constantly forward planning, as I said, constantly. Your brain is ticking, and people think who you could just get into a business with an idea and it will just happen. It never works that way. Your brain has got to constantly be ticking, and out of those thoughts of 100 thoughts a minute, whatever it is, you only need one to come to life. One in your lifetime of thoughts you need to come to life properly. That's all it takes. But people are unwilling to even think for a minute, let alone a month or a year. Does that make sense? So if you're not exploring, how are you going to find the treasure? So you've got to constantly be doing that. Now, what stood out for me when obviously Carlton came to me and said, look, Sumit, this is Brunton Media, this is what Brunton Media is doing, whatever. And I said, you know what, let's have a chat. Let's see where it goes. And I remember having a chat, and really, I wasn't really that interested, to be honest with you. I wasn't really expecting it to go anywhere. But I thought it'd be good to catch up. And I remember the consulting point of it was just a very simplistic view. And people think consulting has to be some high tech, 5 screens in front of you, analyzing graphs and throwing out words from a thesaurus. But it's not that. And I really like the fact that you were able to just give me some very simple, very broad-minded, kind of prompts to help me see things very simply. And I think, especially, like I said, with the year that I've had, my mind being so clouded, it's the simple things you miss out on. It's the simple things you overlook and you overanalyze because your mind is so clouded. So it was a breath of fresh air for sure. And I think that's the best thing, working with people who can simplify things. I don't need to be consulted with heavy text and heavy language, because I do that for a living. And I know how boring it is to do that. So to have to listen to it must be even worse. So that's where I think Brunton Media came in and just helped me really simplify what Suminspire could be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I really appreciate you saying that, because I think for me, MeetSpy was something that, this is like what Suminspire is now becoming, is what I saw it as for a long time, right? For whatever reason, whether it wasn't the right time, whether we weren't like connected enough, or there wasn't trust there, or whatever, right? It didn't get there until now. But I think with this launch and with what we're trying to do here, I think it's going to be something very different, and I think it's going to be something very valuable for many people. And I think you have a lot. I think, and we've said this privately, that you kind of have undersold yourself in some ways in previous content, and I think that's kind of in some ways not helped in bring it to fruition, if that makes sense. But I think we're now in a position where we know who you are aiming to talk to, and we know how to help you talk to them, right? In the content we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. And I think especially as we go, obviously logistically in the world at the moment, we can't really shoot video practically. And that's mainly because I'm from Salisbury and you're from London. That's the main reason as far as I'm concerned anyway. But I think as we build into getting back to doing that, when we can do that, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the shoots we do in comparison to the shoots we did do, say, this time last year, which is really weird to say, because this time last year we were technically just about shooting. COVID hadn't just hit yet. It was about to hit, but little did we know, right? Or we sort of knew, kind of murmuring. I think if you remember, the last shoot we did was it the one in the tunnel, the graffiti tunnel?
That was the last
one. I think
that was
right?
the one. Yeah. When was that? Was that
So
in the summer, or are we going back?
No.
Almost a year now.
No. That was like that. Yeah, that was literally a year from today, pretty much, nearly a year, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I think it'd be interesting to sort of immortalize, I guess, this moment, to think, when, say for example, we can shoot, say the world is in a world where we can shoot in the next 2 quarters, for example, right? So spring comes around, summer comes around, whatever, we can actually shoot, we can actually create content, we can actually do this. What do you want to shoot? What is your ideal scenario to film, right? What kind of content, what type of content, who's involved, what's the project, if you know?
Look, I mean, it's kind of difficult to answer that, really, because I think with the way the brand is shaping up right now, the aim is and always will be to produce content which is going to be of use to other people. One thing we spoke about in our initial consultation was that Suminspire isn't going to be all about making money. Do you know what I mean? Because one of the things I've learned in my 11 years of experience is when you are out there chasing money, it will never come to you, because you are not doing, you are not providing any value when you're doing that. Your heart is, and your soul is not, you're not fully invested into your idea. Does that make sense? You have to be all in, and by that I mean, I'm gonna do it, and when I wake up tomorrow, I'm also gonna be like, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna be like, today I'm gonna do it, and tomorrow I'm gonna wake up and be like, oh, you know what, I'll do it tomorrow. You have to be all in, and I think that's what we're gonna look to produce is content which is going to help people. Let me give an example. So, I wasn't planning to drop this, but I feel like I should do it now. But, one of the things I want to make is I want to make packages, almost online packages of advice, of steps that a person should be taking to create a business. Does that make sense? So, almost like a 1-hour crash course, or it might even be a really long, 3-hour video of different aspects. When you're launching your business and you're doing something, you feel stuck. I want people to be able to be like, you know what, let me go back to that video of Suminspire, that course setup rule, because I'm sure the answer's in there. And that's what I want to give my audience. I want to give people all they need to get off the ground. Now I can't physically force you to get off the ground, but I can give you the ideas that, if you ran with them, 9 out of 10, you'll be successful. And the 1 person out of 10 who's not successful will be the one who has found an excuse somewhere along the way to not implement those ideas. So, and the reason I want to create this is, like I said, when I was making my way into business, and by no means are we the finished article, but I didn't have that resource around me. Does that make sense? Nowadays, I think with the way the world is working, social media, the quality of content, everything out there, it's more accessible now than it ever was. I had to go and do a event management course in person, in an evening course in the city, just to go and gain experience in event management. And I look back now and I think, if I had to do the same thing today, I'd just do it online. Does that make sense? So
yeah, exactly. There's so many resources online, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think it's important to facilitate people's learning now more than ever, whether they're a member of your team, whether they're your employee, whether they're someone you want to work alongside, whether they're a colleague, whether they're just, a friend of yours, or they're a client, or whatever, or even just a random stranger. You need to facilitate their learning and help them understand why whatever it is that you do, your product, your service, your whatever it is that you do is valuable to them, right? Because if they already know and they already trust you, again, it comes up to this know, like, and trust thing, right? Like, I hate to sound like a broken record in marketing, but one of the main things we talk about within marketing, as you would know with your background in multi-level marketing as well, is the know, like, and trust factors, right? How do you know this person? How do you trust this person? And how do you know what they're going to provide you with, right? So the thing is, like, what I think, again, I think what we were limiting in, or what we hadn't necessarily established before we even began, which is what we've done differently this time, is what is the business, right? We had like lots of cool content and we did all these cool videos and you were given a cool message and all this, but there was no objective based thing behind it, which means, and just for clarification for the viewer, right, that means from anyone, it's not Sumit, it's not me, it's not whoever, anyone is not going to invest as much or time and energy and the reality, the fact is money, into something which they don't potentially see, or they don't in theory see a return on, right? It would be wrong of that person to do so, because it's a bad thing to do for a business perspective. It just is, right? Period. It is, right? So I think that's one of the main differences it is here, and that's why I think it's been more, I'm only putting in this so I can sort of let it go, or I don't have to, it's not as serious because there's less on the line. And that was something that I noticed very, very early on, and that was very different and felt very different for me, because this way I've done it and the way I've set it up is very different. you know, and I think that's why it's going to be more successful. That's why it's going to, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that, but from a sales perspective, but also just in general, I think it's important to understand, right, that they will be seen from the client's perspective differently to someone who's listening.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things, it's really actually interesting you said that, because one of the things that I've come to know is, we briefly just touched on underselling a little while back, and I think sometimes this was a conversation we had actually, and I said to you, a lot of my friends were always telling me you undersell yourself a lot, as in you basically just don't sell yourself, and why do you not do that? And I think when you're busy producing results, when you're busy focused on building the best version of yourself, everything else is just irrelevant. Does that make sense? Like, you're not out there. I always say, when a person is trying to show something, it's because they haven't actually got that themselves yet. Does that make sense? So when you see people, and this is incredible because I see a lot of this on social media, and there's people that I've known for years who have the greatest social media accounts, absolutely fantastic. But me being me, and knowing the income they have, or roughly what the income they have, that lifestyle is not realistic in any sort of aspect. And I'm not saying that people out there are not making money, because there's people making a hell of a lot of money in the world. But when you have achieved things and you're just you're constantly motivating yourself, next, you're not going to be bothered about what people think about you. You're not going to be bothered about trying to prove to people that you've achieved all these things. You're not going to be bothered about showing people, oh, look, let me just go and buy that car because it will get me endorsement from other people. It will get me acceptance from other people. You don't need to do that, because end of the day, if you're splashing the cash to give off a perception about yourself, then every single successful and wealthy person will know that you do not have that success that you're showing. Does that make sense? Because if you look around the globe, you look at the most successful people in the world, the most wealthiest people in the world, the most accomplished people in the world. You look at how simple their lives are. You look at how simple their clothes are. You look at how simple some of their cars are. Look at Mark Zuckerberg. He's driving a Hyundai or something, I think it was, which is like, I don't think you can even get 4 people in it. The point is, when your goal of what you're trying to achieve is so big, you don't have time for narrow-minded things like that. You don't have, you don't even have the patience to entertain that stuff. That makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if you're doing well that you shouldn't treat yourself to something. I love cars, for example. I absolutely love cars. And this is really funny because my brother the other day, I was, just online, and I was looking at some Lamborghinis, Huracans, right? Because, I've been in touch with my financial guy recently, and I said to him, I'm looking to purchase a car, and what sort of options do I have? And I think the guy mistook it, because he started sending me emails back with sort of supercars. And I was just looking through them, thinking, what are the prices on these things? And I looked at some of them, and some of them are, absolutely jaw-dropping. But the point is, it's very easy to fall into that trap. That this is what I should be doing. What actually you should be doing is working your backside off. You should not be looking left. You should not be looking right, and you should really not be worrying about what clothes you're wearing. We've all made this mistake, because when I came into business at the age of 21, 22, I started to buy designer suits. That was my thing. And, all of a sudden my suits were costing me more than what I was making. And at what point is that justified? But I came out of that very quickly. And, if you look at my collection of clothes, even, for example, right now, half of them are clothes that my family have brought me. I'm not at all a lover of them. I prefer something simple to the point because my reach is higher than that. Does that make sense? In a strange way, having simple things, I'm not bothered about that. I'm not bothered about walking into a designer shop and getting this because my thinking is well above that. I've got bigger aims. I've got bigger things, bigger fish to fry. Some might say. So it's so important to have that and to understand that creating generational wealth is what's going to create that legacy of you. If you're just going to create enough for yourself and it dies with you and it finishes there, what sort of legacy is there to live by? And I think this is a very important aspect that you have to learn, but it comes with time and it does come with age.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it reminds me of a conversation a friend of mine said to me. Like a lot of successful people get said to like others say to those successful people, whatever your definition of successful, right? Whether that's you own a Lambo, you own a Rolex, you own a designer suit, you own a big house, you own a whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Whatever your definition of success is, they go, oh, you're so lucky because you've got X and Y and so on. And the most successful people just stay silent. They just like, yeah, okay, dude. Because the thing is, the reality of the fact is, once you are in a position where you understand that it's for the grind and you live for the fire, you live for the wants, you live for the drive, you live for whatever you want to call it, you don't necessarily, the feeling of like, yeah, I'm going to treat myself and buy myself a Rolex or I'm going to buy myself a Lambo, whatever, fine, right? Yeah, fine. But if that's just a, oh, cool, I ticked it off. That's how I see it anyway. It's not a, I'm striving for this goal. It's I've got to this point. I can now afford a luxury item or something which I see as a luxury item, right? I would, to be honest, rather spend something on a business expense, right? So, for example, I'd rather spend the same kind of money on like a cinema camera than on a watch or a suit or whatever, right? Because the reason and the main reason why and what I do is because it will increase the ability for me to be able to make more money in the future because my quality of work is going to go up by me having a better camera, right? Now, by no means, again, like before, filmmakers write in the comments, oh, it's all about gear. No, yes, and no. You need to know how to use the stuff you have, right? Of course, but the main point there is, if you're going to spend money, I would much rather spend it on something that I'm going to be able to generate into more revenue instead of just something I can get attention with, right? Or is perceived success. Now, there is a definition and there is benefit in having perceived success because, unfortunately, we're in quite a shallow society. And if you're trying to make social media content and you're trying to put over the fact that you are successful and you are, entrepreneurial and you are making lots of money, then you kind of need to show to a certain level, you need to show, look at me with my Mercedes, look at me with my Lambo, look at me with my Rolex, look at me with my, designer suit, whatever, right? But it only gets so far because there's a point where your I guess the meat is kind of tested there, right? On your understanding or your want or what you do, and what really comes through, I don't know whether you would agree, but what really comes through for me is the personality of the person, how consistent are they, how hard have they worked, how hard do they continue to work even when they have perceived success, right? Because the thing is, and I don't know whether you found this as well, whenever I've achieved something, I'm always like, well, okay, so I've achieved this, now let's double it or triple it, and then let's go for that now, right? Because I've got to this one place on the ladder, I now want to get 4 runs up in the same period of time.
Agree. And look, any income you make, a smart person will reinvest 80% of that, as you're saying. Any profit you make, anything you make, a smart person will reinvest 80 of it into a business idea or their business and live off the 20% or whatever's necessary to pay your bills. And that's how you create generational wealth. That's how you build your portfolio. Let's say you tomorrow I don't know, let's say you inherited some wealth through your family generation or whatever. It might just be something very small. It might be 30, 40,000. Now, I bet 8 out of 10 people would just be like, ooh, £30,000.
Let's go and blow it in the supermarket.
Oh, 100%. Maybe not a supermarket, maybe a casino, but
yeah. I'm gonna go buy everything I've ever wanted.
But I bet most people would just be like, let me buy a car with it, or I'll just do some shopping and maybe I'll go on a few holidays with this, my holiday fund. instead of thinking this is potentially 30, 40,000 pounds I could put down for a deposit of a home, of a house I can possibly buy, and my wages can then pay the mortgage. Instead of thinking in that direction, and then thinking even further that if I can put a deposit down for a house, I can pay my mortgage over, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, and then that house becomes free. That's potentially an asset of, let's say, if you're paying London prices, anything from 500,000 to £1 million asset that you can play with. And if people, I'm not going to go too much into it because this is going to be one of my topics I discuss in my portfolio. But if you've got an asset of 500 to £1 million in your hand, if you're clever, you can turn that into 10 million in a very short space of time. But again, that goes back to what you were just saying a few minutes ago. It's where your mentality's at. If you come into contact with $1 million, what are you going to do? Because the temptation is to spend it, no doubt. The temptation is, oh, there's a Lamborghini. I can buy that, and I'll still have enough to be comfortable. Or your mentality
could not, can you spend it, right? The question is not do you spend it, it's how you spend it, right? Because clearly it's sitting there in cash is also a bad idea, right? Like, it's sitting there in cash is probably the worst place it can be, to be honest, right? So the question there is then, how do you turn it in my opinion anyway, how do you turn it into another million, and another million, right? But they just lagged millions, right? They're not millions tomorrow, they're millions in, 10 years, 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever it is, right?
And that's where you've got to switch your mentality, because, and this is what I find crazy, people, if people listen to just that little bit there, Colin, right? 5, 10, 15, and forget that. Who's going to wait that long to turn 1 million into 10, right? But they will happily spend 15 years in their job, moaning every single day. I'm not being funny, but if someone said to me, I'm going to give you 15 years, in 15 years, you're going to have 15 million pounds. Your net worth is going to be 15 million. And if somebody said to me, in 15 years' time, you're going to go from pushing trolleys to being, I don't know, an operations manager in this company, I know which one I'd be picking. But for some reason, when people hear this in realism, and it's just having that mentality of, I want to make a change. And I think until that doesn't come about, it's very difficult, because look, no one's ever going to be loyal, to something that doesn't fit their needs. I always say this: people are loyal to their needs, and you're only loyal to a place until it's fulfilling your needs. When it's no longer fulfilling your needs, you're going to be out there looking for an opportunity. But here's the crazy thing: you might not realize until it's too late that your needs are not being fulfilled. And then all of a sudden, you've missed that window of opportunity. And, you're constantly grasping at things which, are well out of your grasp by that stage.
The thing is, though, right, like that change or that leap or that change, right, you go from having like a security net, right? And I had this last year, nearly a year to the day, right? I had this last year. I was like, right, I've got this amount of income coming in. I show up, I do the hours, I get paid. Show up, do the hours, get paid. Show up, do the hours, get paid. Right? The thing is, what happens when you say, I don't want that anymore, is it's then up to you how much you make. Right? That's a very scary prospect at the start. It is. Right? There was a good 4 or 5 months where I went shit for a long time. Right? And the reason why was because it took me a while to get to the point where I trust myself when I'm in a position where I need to make money, I can make money. Right? I'm now in a position where I'm not, of course I have days where I'm stressed and I'm worried, I'm concerned, right? Of course, everyone has them, right? But the difference is now, a year on, I trust myself when I need to be able to make the money to understand how to use my network. And that sounds really bad, I know, but to utilise my network or utilise the people they know to be able to be in a position where I can offer those people a valuable service which they're going to pay me for.
Sure. Agree.
I think that's the main difference between someone who is potentially an entrepreneur and is an entrepreneur, right? They have the potential and they have a catalyst to become one, but they aren't one because they don't trust themselves to be able to make the money, right? Because the thing is, like, there's one thing about, like, you know, I'm sure everyone's had the same equivalent, right, where you sell sweets in school, you do a paper round, whatever it is, right? I've done all the above. But there's a big difference between those levels of money and the levels of money you need to live on, right? When you're in a position where you know and you trust yourself to be able to make the kind of money you know you need to live on and some more, you're then in a position where you have a very powerful, you're in quite a very powerful position, because your own mindset is, oh, okay, so I have this problem now, right? Every problem that a business owner comes to or whatever isn't a problem, it's a challenge to be overcome. The pandemic was one, the recession will be one, you know, whatever happens next will be one. You know, have you found that as well? I don't want to speak for you, but like that's just how I found it. And I think that's how I found it in my first year of, like, quote unquote actually being full time. Have you? And it would be interesting, I think, for the viewer, but also for me, because you've obviously done this a lot longer, right? So is that true? Is that have I just got lucky, so to speak?
Look, you build your own luck, and that's very important to remember, because no one just gets lucky. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't have a thought and then tomorrow, you know, I'm sitting at the top of that thought. So you never get lucky. Your first, you know, like I always say, patience is a big thing. Your first 5 years, if you're breaking even just after 5 years, you know, give yourself a pat on the back, because most businesses fail within the first 5 years of launching. And you know, I don't want.
The odds is that, just to not, like, glorify business owning,
Yeah.
just for a minute, you are set to fail statistically before COVID started, before the recession started. In the best economy you could think of, you're going to fail statistically.
Agree. Yeah.
Right? And it's even worse now for obvious reasons, right? Like it is. I still want to jump in and make that point before you carried on. But, you know, it requires a certain level of, I use the term balls or effort or, you know, gusto, I guess, to do because of that fact.
Look, it's a very simple thing. You know, you can go about and push all the weights you want. Let's just take gym for an example. You can go and you can push all the weights you want, but end of the day, it's not about, you know, look how hard I'm working. It's not about that. It's more the fact that I am working hard for this purpose. So you've got to have a reason for what you're doing. And I think a lot of people don't really have a reason. They're just doing something on repeat without any real direction or plan or goal or anything. And I'd hate to be one of them people, because I have been one of them people at some stage in my life, and it's boring. It is boring. And, you know, like you said, you are set up to fail. Everything, forget COVID, pre-COVID, take everything back a year and a half. You're genuinely, the way the world is set up, you're born to fail. But it's how do you turn those failures into success? And that's where, you know, you've got to know that constant failures, the more you fail, the more successful you'll be. I promise you that. And if you fail and you feel like you failed altogether, it's because you haven't even tried to be successful. You can only fail if you try something, right? You can't fail. If I'm sitting here and I'm not going to get out of my car, how am I going to slip on that ice and learn that next time I shouldn't do that?
Next time, yeah. How do you know stuff hurts? Well, you put your hand on something hot and it hurts, right? Oh, okay, I probably shouldn't do that again, right? So it's the same with business, right? You ask 1,000 times in a different way each time, and then you work out which one works, because you'll be able to tell which one did you actually get hired for.
Definitely.
Right? You just through process of elimination, you'll be able to go, okay, well, that one didn't work, but that one did.
And it's very important to remember that, you know, we all know the big brands, right? We all know the companies. Let's take Richard Branson. Look at how many companies he has tried to launch that have failed, that I bet a lot of people don't know about, because they're only counting his successes, they're not counting his failures. But if I bet if you ask Richard Branson today, he would tell you even the failures were worth it, because they created the mindset, they generated possibly the idea for the next successful project. And I think that is so important to remember, that people are constantly failing in life, and the more you fail, the more you succeed. And this might not make sense to some people right now, but you have to go through that journey. Like I said, you have to be fully invested in yourself. And the more you invest in yourself, believe you me, the more knowledge you can generate, the more success will come your way, because life is about learning. That's what we're there for. Nobody is born with all the knowledge in the world. We all learn things. And the difference is, are you willing to learn in order to earn? That really is the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, another way of putting it would be, are you willing to fall on your face more times than you can imagine to then be able to not fall on your face once, right? And what I said very early on when I went full time was, look, I'm going to give this 6 months. I'm more than happy to eat my pride and go get my old job back if I fall on my face, right? But if I don't make this decision now, I will hate myself, because I will never have known what if I did that. What if I made that decision, right? If I had never made that decision, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't have been able to achieve everything I've quote unquote achieved, right? And to be honest, I would be in a very different place. They're not better. That's not better. That's not worse, right? I would be in a different place, right? And this is something that you need to understand. Someone listening now needs to understand that there's no wrong or right answer here, right? It's, you either go left or you go right. And I think, I think that's an important note, and I'm fully aware of time, so I think let's wrap it up soon. So, I think, is there any like final thoughts or final questions, or any question you wanted to ask me in specific? I like throwing this on the end, just because I think that sometimes when I'm in an interview, there's normally a question that normally bubbles to the top. Is there anything you want to ask me, or a comment or a point that you want to leave off on?
I'll just sign off here. And then I'm going to finish with a question for you. So from my perspective, look, we're here, man. We're doing our thing. End of the day, and that comes with a lot of sacrifice. That makes sense. I traded a lot of friendships and a lot of nights out for nights in working on projects. I've traded a lot of things that people think, are important. This whole thing about, I'm young, I want to live my life. You can live your life all you want, but what you do today is going to reap repercussions going forward. And today, my reality is better than my dreams were. And, I look back and I think, in 11 years, could I have imagined even to be, where life has brought me to today? And believe you me, none of what I have today, and I don't mean this, materialistically, none of what I have today did I ever imagine having all those years back. But then I look at the process of it and the amount of pain there was amongst that, growing pains, I call them. Because the more you grow, the more painful it is, because you've got to do, it's almost like another layer you've got to peel back, right? And for me, for any young entrepreneur out there, in particular, I'd say young entrepreneurs, who've just left uni, you're hungry, you want to tackle the world, you want to go out there, you want to get it. That's great. But you've got to have that hunger for at least 10 years in you for it to work.
And you've got to keep it. Yeah, I was going to say, and you've got to keep it for longer than you
By
think.
that, I don't mean you need to let the world know every single day. Don't get me wrong. But it needs to be inside you, that burning desire, that work ethic. An example, when you wake up, it should not be, oh, I have to go in. It should be, I can't wait to get in. And
yes, I get to go to work today. Yeah, yes, do it.
When you're working for yourself, when you're putting your life on the line, you better be excited for that shit. Because at the end of the day, that's you. You're putting yourself out there. And when you put yourself out there, I bet, people will, do 100 times more when you step out of that comfort zone. And you've got to do that. And you've got to do that. And you've got to keep doing that. And I bet if you looked back and you took this advice on and 10 years down the line you look back at it, I guarantee you'd be in a much better position than what you're even thinking of today. And you'll probably be in a more realistic position. And all the things that you thought mattered will all of a sudden not matter, because you will be well above that without even knowing. You'll be well above the possessions, you'll be well above the materialistic things, and your goal will be more than just making money. You'd actually want to give as much as you're getting. And I think until you don't feel that and you don't have that inside you, you're going to struggle, and there's no doubt you're going to struggle. So
Absolutely.
I think
I completely agree.
That's me from my side. So thank you for having me on, Carlton. But before we obviously sign out, just a couple of minutes, I just wanted to get an understanding of where do you see Brunton Media in the next 5 years?
That's always a question I'd never know how to answer, because if you had asked me this in like year 1, year 2, I'd be like, this is where it is, right? But for me, obviously I have like a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan and a 3-year plan, a 2-year, but whatever, right? Like I have those things, of course, right? Simple answer, I want to build the agency bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I want it to become an agency. I want to be able to have a team. I want to be able to, have multiple videographers within the company, to be able to do multiple projects for different clients at the same time, and for me to oversee those and etc. Right? But like they're like more of an objectional where do I see Brunton Media? Everything else, it's not, and if that doesn't happen, that doesn't happen, right? All I can say here is it will be where it's meant to be in 5 years, right? If that means Brunton Media is not a thing anymore, fine. That's where it's meant to be. If that means I'm no longer leading it, or I'm in a different role in it, fine. That's also fine. That's also where it's meant to be, right? I think people get very connected or very attached to this perceived idea of where their business or where their thing wants to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, 2 months, right? And the thing is, and something that the pandemic's shown me more than anything, is you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So stop trying to pretend that you plan for it, sure, but stop trying to pretend that you can control it, because you can't. You've just got to grit your teeth, understand how to deal with it, think about how to deal with it, and then, know that you can trust yourself that you're going to be able to walk forward, right? Like, you made the first step, so keep walking forward, keep going. That's it. That's all you can do. And I think that's important. So I know that doesn't really answer your question, but it also does, because I think that it will be, as I say, it will be where it is meant to be, right? It's my ideal goal where it will be now will not actually be where it ends up, because my ideal goal will change within the next year to 2 to 3 to 4.
Agree. Very much agree. And I think just to sign off on that, the reason I asked that question is because I can never know how to answer that myself. I've developed a very simple answer over the years, which has been, however many years from now, I just want to give the best to my clients. Because that's what's always got me business is. I think we briefly touched on last time. What got me business over the years has been me. It's been myself, and people investing in me more than what service I'm bringing. If that makes sense, and that's part of the parcel. You can bring the best service, but if people can't relate to you, if they can't get an understanding of you, if they can't,
and also if they can't work with you as a person, right? If we couldn't work together, it wouldn't matter.
I don't think it's even about working with people. It's just can people buy into your vision? That's the thing. Are people willing to buy into your vision? And I have clients who've brought into my vision more than they brought into the product. And that's power right there. And if you can develop that art and really thrive with it, you'll be in a different world, in a different class.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we'll sign off because I'm driving now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so thank you so much for coming on. where can people, just as a final note, those who are interested, where can people find you? And I will, of course, leave attached links in the description of this video for those who may be interested.
Look, you can find me on Google. I'm sure, things will pop up, companies that I'm associated to, but, hit me up on Instagram, Suminspire. The page is going live on the 1st of February, courtesy of Carlton Brunton from Brunton Media. So if it's not live for the 1st, you need to go and grab him and ask him why. But, we have a website which is in the process of its finalization, and you can also find me on YouTube. But all of my details from all my accounts on social media, best place to find me is on Instagram, Suminspire, and I look forward to welcoming you on your journey.
Thanks for your time, man. Love it. Job done.
Lovely job, Brunto.
Thank you so much for joining me, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you did enjoy that insight into Sumit's new business that I'm helping him with and we're helping build as a bigger, stronger brand, and also introducing a little bit into the consulting services I may be able to offer you as a business owner during this, what's going to be another, I think, interesting year for business owners everywhere, all over the world in this global pandemic as it raids on and, carries on. But, thank you so much for coming back this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I'd love to hear what you think. As I said at the intro, in the comment section down below, if you're brand new to the channel and you would like to see more podcast content or more content with me and about shooting where possible and etc., then make sure to be subscribed to the channel, and I'll see you very, very soon.